Hey guys, Coach Ben here. We're live. This is the Benchcast. All right, we're live on the Benchcast. Bench Talk Live. It is Tuesday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. You know what time it is, guys. This is Bench Talk Live, where I answer your questions, anything benching. We were talking about anything, any topics you guys want to mention. We will discuss here live. So just waiting for people to file in. This goes live on our YouTube, so make sure Tuesdays, 12 p.m. Eastern Time, you tune into our YouTube channel, Big Benches, and you can answer or you can give your questions live on the podcast. Sip of coffee to the working man. Have my Starbucks cup with me today. Damn good. Actually, Starbucks is probably my least favorite coffee. I'm a Panera Bread guy. But very accessible is Starbucks, and that caffeine hits. Mind Freak, how are you, brother? How are you doing, my friend? Thank you for joining into the Benchcast. I appreciate you being here. Eshan Saw, hey, I love your channel, man. I appreciate that very much, my friend. Thanks for tuning in to the live podcast. We're taking bench questions, talking bench, whatever you guys want to talk about today. This is our live podcast episode. We had a question come through on Instagram the other day. We can always answer, or on Mondays, we take the questions we get on our story. I post a little question tab, so I also take questions from there if you guys aren't able to join in. Matt, with training the back, do you like single arm exercises or both arms, like dumbbell rows versus barbell rows, for example? So I definitely utilize both. Um, the barbell rows and some of those heavier variations where you have to, but you would be using both arms to get the most weight out of it. Barbell rows, all that, rack rows, block rows, however you want to spin the variation. Usually, what we'll start off with, we'll do that pretty heavy, and then I'll go into some more of the single arm isolation back exercises, dumbbell rows, things like that. If I'm on a piece of equipment, a hammer strength row or something like that, I'll try to get some single arm work in. I will use, some of those handles move independently of each other, so I will try to get both the single arm stuff in, plus both arms, handle a little bit more weight. So we utilize both, definitely. I think both can be, should be a staple in back training. Mind Freak, do you stretch arm during off days to keep your arm flexible? I don't do too much on off days in terms of stretching the arm. My main priority usually is in the shoulders and that T-spine extension. So even right now, I'm just trying to be positionally aware of making sure my traps aren't overtaking me here and I'm not rounding my upper back seated position. So I try to be mindful of those types of things. I work on shoulder mobility, but I don't do any like direct arm stretches. Nor do I really feel like I need to, though. I've been very fortunate lately. I've been feeling awesome on the bench, and nothing feels like over tight or anything like that. I'm not getting any discomforts or pain, and I'm handling a lot of weight, so I feel good. I feel good. So yeah, don't really implement any of that right now. But it's not a bad thing to do, especially if you need to do it. Those off days and time in between training is the time you want to spend working mobility, stretching, doing all that stuff. Try not to do any static stretching either before training. Everything I do, I try to keep movement based, a little bit more ballistic, stuff like that. Um, did a Actually did a report in college at one point about how static stretching can have some detriments towards your strength training. Usually more prolonged periods of time, above 30, 60 seconds, something like that. Under 30 seconds of a static stretch is not going to make or break your performance, but usually reserve that for off days. KMC Go Sheaking. Do you use bands in your back workouts? So yes, definitely in terms of back stability work. That's primarily done with bands. So we're talking our seated band rows, talking the reverse band bench row, where you're laying down on a bench, bar suspended in the rack via bands, and you're pulling it down to you. You can hold that for time, do that for reps. Um, so a lot of like those stabilizing movements, yeah, sure, we'll definitely utilize a lot of bands, but predominantly the back work that we're going to be doing is going to be free weight based or on machines, as opposed to bands. Um, and cable machines, things like that. So typically the bands are mostly reserved for if you don't have access to a gym for training at home. So a lot of our athletes have had to do this past year. Many gyms are closing or getting locked down again. So a lot of training's gonna be back or banded. But typically all stability type movements that we do, the seated band row, for example, that's a big one that I include with our athletes. Lying lat takeover, lying lat pull over hold, all done with band tension. Taking any live questions, guys. And remember, biggest thing you can do to help out the podcast is just tell a friend. Hey, Tuesdays, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. All right, Coach Ben going live on YouTube. Check it out. Check out the Benchcast on Spotify. Any of that. All that helps. Just spread the word. Just spread the word. Tell one friend. It helps out the podcast a ton. We had a great question on the topic of back training the other day. It was from Matt. Can you do heavy back work on the same day as your bench training? And yeah, you absolutely can. Um, in fact, we train back every session. I always try to have back movement in there every session. Heavy rows in there quite often. Light variations for upper back, things like that. So yeah, we're training back pretty much all the time. Not just strictly on bench days or other days or their own days. Just training back all the time. That's definitely an area where when I program for our athletes, one thing I tell them. So if we're going to more like a 4-day schedule and they're used to training like every day, I have no problem with you going in and doing some training, but keep it posterior chain. A lot of back work, glutes, hamstrings, all that stuff. I don't think we can train too much on. We can't train enough on those exercise on those body parts, back, hamstrings, glutes. I mean, we can attack those quite frequently, and I think they would have some really great results. And I think most people need to train back more often. Key component here is knowing how to utilize your back with that strength. So it's not just gaining the back strength, because if you're not utilizing your back properly, that's not going to help you. Okay, if you're utilizing your back properly and we do a bunch of back work, then you're going to see a big takeoff in your bench. But those two things have to happen together. All right. I wrote an article on this called Big Back, Big Bench, and it's on Elite FTS, and it talks about some of my favorite movements to build back strength, and then also to promote utilizing your back properly. So check that out. That's on Elite FTS. You can search my name, Nick Benarakis, as an author to pop up. Big benches, big back, big bench. Simply put, that's the title. So check that out. That was a great article that we did on that. Zoomer Doomer, thanks for joining in, my friend. What do you think of really slow negatives on the bench plus 3-second pauses? Good for getting more out of less weight. So tempo work, pretty much what we're talking about here. Cadencing on the way down, whether that's 3-5 seconds, eccentric, and then holding a pause. And yeah, that's absolutely something that we utilize with our athletes. The nice thing about tempo work is you have to remain in control throughout the entire range of motion. So many athletes will find, especially when we're talking like squats and deadlifts too, that at some point in the range of motion, it's tough for them to remain stable. Like there's always that weak area. Now with tempo work, you are moving so slow through all this range of motion that you are forced to really be aware of the tights you're creating along the whole range of motion. So tempo work is fantastic. Like you said, you're going to be able to get a lot more out of less weight, which is key, and that's why it'll be a staple in the off season when we're trying to purposely work with less weight to deload our bodies. And that's typically where I'll have it. The programming, if we're going to do tempo work, that's going to be pretty early in a training cycle for sure. That's a great question there, my friend. I'm freak. My shoulder blades don't synchronize together while centric part of the bench press. do you have suggestion to warm up shoulder blades in a better way other than band warm up? So the upper back warm that I just came out with, that's helped me tremendously in my bench. You know, I was going from handling low 700s most of the time and feeling like I was getting out of position to locking down really, really well and being super stable. I had 900 pounds in my hands last week. So, talking being confident with huge amounts of weight in my hand, and I attribute it to the upper back warm that we developed. Pretty much have been noting what works well, what was helping me a lot, and then just piecing them all together as you want. Trying new variants, piecing it all together, the big bend holds. A lot of this all includes bands, you know, so um, that is a big component. It's not stretching or anything, that's movement based. And we have a video on YouTube, upper back warm up, big benches. Search that. That will be a huge lifesaver, I think, for you, my friend. I think that'll really help out with the retraction of the shoulder blade and stuff like that. I really think you'll be able to get into these positions you want to get into. I'd also look at your setup. You know, one of the things, talking scap retraction, that I like to do is when we're in that bridged up position, getting into our setup, push against the side rails of the bench press. If you have them available, the safeties or the upright, pushing against something to actively gain that positioning. Because if you just passively try to pinch your shoulder blades together, you're only going to be able to reach a certain point. If you can actively jam your shoulder blades together, then we're going to get somewhere. You know, so that would be my recommendations to you. Zoomer Doomer, thoughts on Matt Wenning? I don't know him personally. I love the content he puts out, but I guess that's as much as I can comment on that. I think, I love all the stuff that the content he puts out. I think he's a well thought person, probably a great coach, and I'm sure you can learn a lot from him, as with a lot of people out there. And can't really comment on him personally because I don't know him, never had the opportunity to meet him, so. So about all I got to say about that. Sip of coffee to the working man. Got my Starbucks today. Tom Lindbergh. Thanks for joining in, Tom. I bench people. I can bench 200 people at once. Well, that's pretty damn impressive. Oh yeah, Mike Frazier. Can I please get a lift off? Morning, coach. Good morning, Mike. I wish I could give you a lift off, bud. Poor Mike, he trains home alone on his bench unit. Just got in the Texas Strength Systems bench, same one I got. So he's making do at home. I feel real bad for you, Mike. Anyone out in California, I think your gyms, at least in Mike's experience, have open and closed like 3 separate occasions now. It has just been a giant up and down shit shoot. So you don't one minute the gym's open, now it's not. Now it's open, now it's not. So I feel for you, Mike. Keep grinding away, buddy. Zoomer Doomer, favorite power lifter. So I would have to say someone, big bencher. Tiny Meeker is definitely up there. Jimmy Cobb right now. Love watching his stuff. And I'm actually subscribed to his Patreon channel. I definitely recommend everyone go check out his Patreon channel. If you're into benching, a lot of great information there. And, you can always gain a lot from watching another guy give his thoughts on the training and just seeing someone train and what they're doing and take away bits and pieces here. And he's really great at putting out that content now, and he's got a great podcast. So I've been loving to see what he's doing. And now he's out of the military, put more time towards it. And also, big fan of Scott Mendelson. Love the videos he's putting out now too. So it would have to be someone at the big bencher. Yeah, so I think that's a given. Mind freak table, 900-pound bench press. You're a genetic freak. Well, the good genetics I do have, I wouldn't say I'm genetically gifted in terms of gaining size or strength. That's for sure. I always had to scrap for that. But what I'm very genetically blessed, short arms. And I tell you, if you had, I'm telling you, I don't think any of you watching are going to beat me in the short arm category. They're pretty short. So my limb length is very fine tuned for the bench press. I have a big ass bench belly, so that helps too. So that's really where my genetic gifts come in. Short arms, drink enough whiskey to gain a belly. So there you have it. There's the secrets to the trade. Matt, do you keep the weight on your accessory? Do you keep your weight on the accessory work the same week to week, or does it vary based on your bench work that day? So we do like kind of a wave load progression. And in my training, I try to. I've been doing more like variations of exercises. So like on my back day tomorrow, I'm gonna go into the gym. I'm gonna do some back and tris. Um, Not quite sure what I'm gonna do. I think Friday is gonna be pretty high board heavy. We're gonna do lockout work and stuff, which is actually more difficult than me doing a one board. It's actually harder for me to go off like a two board or 1.5 than it is a one board, just because I'm not able to load the shirt as much. But yeah, I probably won't hit his triceps as hard. I'll probably hit triceps, but for example, I'll go in tomorrow and I'll just do completely different back movements than I have been doing. So that's kind of what I've been doing for my progression, my training lately. For our athletes, we use a wave progression. So week one will be setting the tone, so to speak. Say we're doing like a 3x10 or something like that. Get familiar with the movement pattern of what weight you're going to lift. Next week it goes to like a 4x8 or 4x6. So it's going to be more sets, but we're dropping the reps down. Therefore, hopefully we can get more weight on the bar. We would definitely expect week two to have the most weight on the bar that we can get. After you're familiar with the movement, then week three, we're same scheme as week one, maybe a 3x10 or something like that. We will definitely try to beat week one's weight. That's the goal there. With week three, we're not necessarily trying to beat the previous week's weight, but we're definitely trying to beat what we did week one confidently. And then week four is like that deload, so it'd be like 2x15, something like that. Be a higher rep. If you can use similar weight that you did week one, that would be ideal. So it's all about progressing in that manner. It's all wave loaded. Let's see. Rails, what's up, coach? Thanks for joining in, bud. Mind Freak coach, do you believe in deload week? Does it really improve performance in terms of powerlifting or improving lifting process? So, I like deloads when applicable. All right, if it's not applicable to the power lifter in question, then I don't think you necessarily need to deload. Um, you have to have a good awareness of your training, though, because what I find majority of the time when an athlete says they don't need to deload, they actually do. Um, so you need to know, because sometimes it's not always that you have to feel beaten down. Sometimes it's just good to I almost think of it kind of like prehab. All right, not getting to the point where you're feeling uncomfortable. Okay, I'll typically, for that reason, I'll deload about every 4 weeks or so. Um, I'll have a lighter variation in. Doesn't necessarily mean that you have to deload and that you can't go heavy. What I will do is use like a Titan Ram instead of my bench shirt, and that will deload me in terms of total weight used about 25-30% my 1 rep max. So that's how I'll deload. Um, I can still work up heavy. It's still a heavy day. Still bring intensity to it. It doesn't mean that I have to do just light work, but I'm doing a variation or using a tool that's not going to allow me to use as much weight, and that just keeps your body healthy. If you're constantly loading yourself up with more and more weight every week, I mean, eventually that's going to come back to bite you. So it really depends on the person, your ability to recover. Um, so it's a highly individual thing. Zoomer Doomer, incline bench and standing press. Good for flat bench strength. Yeah, so I definitely like both those variations. I think incline bench is especially great for those who have trouble doing a standing overhead, whether it's limited mobility or whatever. I've been on record as saying how important overhead pressing can be for your bench strength. So absolutely, I think both of those variants are pretty critical towards ultimately getting that flat bench up. Works more your upper body. You can't get as much, like if you're getting a lot out of your setup, obviously you're not going to get as much incline, definitely not standing. Um, and it's going to target in a lot more chest development, shoulders, things like that. Close grip incline's a great one. Tricep strength. T. Kylene, where are strong bench pressers who recommend that you bench press 5 times a week? What do you think? I can only do it twice a week. there are so you're saying people recommend 5 times a week. That's a lot. That's a lot of frequency. Even our bench only athletes, I'll have them at tops like doing benching 3 times a week, and one of those is a recovery based workout, so it's not much benching. Um, yeah, that five days a week's a lot to bench. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. Depends how you're waiving your intensity. Obviously, if you're gonna bench 5 times a week, you're not going heavy every session. That's not gonna happen. I'll tell you that right now. So, um, obviously, there's going to be some progression to that. Maybe one day is like a bamboo bar or something like that. You can definitely get away with benching 5 times a week, especially if you're bench only. I don't see how that would apply well to a full power lifter, but um, definitely think it's not out of the question. I just would usually never steer towards that. Sometimes I have bumped up frequency, especially for lifters with not as much experience, typically younger, have better recovery capabilities, and just need more practice. Aren't handling heavy weight right now as current, and just need more time under the bar. And that's usually where I'll use more like that high frequency stuff. But if I was working with high schoolers, I wouldn't be afraid to have them bench very often, do other movements very often. I don't think it would be a bad thing to necessarily come into a session and squat bench and squat bench later in the week too. Um, it's really just kind of getting time under the bar. Obviously, probably not going to go heavy every session, but time under the bar, learning that groove, that pattern. Zoomer Doomer, thoughts on dips and push-up variations for the bench press. So dips, I don't personally do much dips. I do bench dips with like your arms behind you. I don't do much like power tower dips. Um, I just never really been a fan. It's very easy to kind of get to your pec and get into a stretched range of motion here, in which if you lose that tension, it's hard to kind of get your back tight. But if you lose that tension, I've seen videos of a lot of pec tears, and it always freaks me out. So I just steer clear of them. Um, Nothing wrong with them. Definitely nothing wrong with them. I think it's a great way to build up your dips, your tricep strength. But it's a risk versus reward thing. I think it's a more riskier variation, especially if you load it up with chains or weight. Um, so I just kind of stay clear of that. I think I get plenty of tricep work in from small movements, tricep push down, stuff like that. And push-ups, I don't do much push-ups, to be honest with you. I think they have their place, but the thing with the push-up is you're not going to be able to overload it enough to get a significant stimulus to help your bench press. If you just start now and your bench press isn't that strong already, then push-ups is a great way to kind of build that upper body volume. I remember I was playing football. This is like middle school, and I didn't do too much lifting at the time. I got into the basement every now and then, did some lifting, but it wasn't until after that. I remember initially in practices, just push-ups all the time, and I was sore from it, and gained actually a lot of size. Got pretty big doing push-ups, and feel the strength, could see the size. That was early on. That was like middle school, and that was my first stimulus into kind of doing any kind of lifting. So got very big significant benefits from it. But if you're benching 300, 400, 500 pounds, how much is a push-up going to help you? You can accumulate a lot of push-ups throughout the day, but that's going to be more muscular endurance. Unless someone was going to load up a shit ton of plates or sit on your back, you're just not going to get a significant stimulus from push-ups. So that's kind of my thought on that. I don't think they're necessary. I think they're a great way, to build that muscular endurance, which will help in the bench press, certainly, because you're able to have a better work capacity. You're able to recover from the work that you're doing a little more efficiently. So that's where it helps there. Alan Roy. Hi, Benny. I've implemented a lot of floor pressing for over a year now after researching and coming across one of your videos. My bench has really gone up as a result, and I'm 60 years old. That's awesome, Alan. I'm really glad that floor press video helped you out. Great movement, and especially too when you get a little bit older. When maybe you can't go full range as much, right? You're using some of those partial range stuff, floor presses, board presses, stuff like that. Allows you to train efficiently without risking injury going full range. So, deals, sip of coffee to the Illuminati. I'm not familiar with all those groups, but hey, sip of coffee to the working man out there. Alrighty. I know Louis Simmons liked push-ups. Adil says, although he would have his guys do failure sets with 100 pounds or more on their back. Yeah, so that might give you a significant enough stimulus, and that would be a good accessory-based movement. You think of what we do with accessories, a lot of higher reps and stuff like that. But if you can pound out 60 push-ups in a sitting without problem, then unless you weight it, you're not getting much out of it. Geo Power 50, Coach, after a raw bench session of work sets 3x5, what would your accessories be for a good, solid, typical workout? Example, adding in back, arms, shoulders, accessories. Thank you. So, again, it depends on the person, but typically we're going to look to attack triceps and back. So it's or back and then triceps. So I'm always going to try to finish out some bench work with back movement. That goes for our quick lifters, our raw work, or our raw lifters. We're always going to have back work in after the bench. Then it's typically going to be triceps, especially for equipped lifters. We're going to really hammer triceps. It's going to be a lot of back and triceps. And that goes for our raw lifters too, because that's really the primary things that are engaged when you're bench pressing. If we're in a good setup, we're utilizing our back effectively. It's not as much the chest and shoulders. I will prioritize more that shoulder development for our raw lifters, because I do think that comes into play a lot more. For example, most this year, my shoulder's been pretty messed up, my left shoulder. Come around now, feel good. And, I had to stay clear of any raw benching because it really hurt that loading. And, I could bench in the Titan Ram, I could bench in the shirt very effectively, handle pretty heavy weight, and not have a problem. So, you're not going to utilize your shoulder quite as much with a quick benching. It's a lot of back and triceps. You need the strength there. Same with raw, but obviously shoulders are going to come into play a lot more. Same with chest too. Really depends on what kind of grip you use and range of motion, stuff like that. But I would usually like to try to get 2 back movements in, and accessories, 2 tricep movements, 1 shoulder for a raw lifter, something like that. Deals training. How much push-ups did you do, and what was your initial bench when you started? Um, how much push-up did you do? So I don't really know right now. To be honest with you, I haven't done like a max push-ups in like a couple of years. In which I think I got in the 60s. So I don't really know what I could get now. Probably not that, but who knows? It was a challenge back then. We had a little battle going on, so I'm sure that would have pushed me a little bit more than I pushed myself just doing them now. So in the bench press when I first started, man, I remember I couldn't even. So we're talking when I first started, not just like trying to start powerlifting. When I first started, um, I would lift in the basement with my dad, and he wouldn't even let me use the bar because big movement, you have to have coordination for it. He started me out with dumbbells. First, thought it was a smart thing back then. I was only handling like 10, 15-pound dumbbells, and they were going all over the place. It's like any classic, middle school kid that comes in training for the first time, right? The dumbbells are flying all over the place because you're learning how to actually coordinate the movement. So I have these 10-pound dumbbells flying all over the place, trying not to conk myself in the head. I remember all that. And then I remember working with an empty bar and shit's swinging around on me. It's a freaking disaster. To the point where I remember finally building up to that first plate bench, and that was a huge thing. You tell your friends, "Hey, I bench a plate," and then I remember struggling to get the 2 plate bench. So I remember all those milestones. I mean, I really started from the ground up in terms of I was struggling with an empty bar, no joke, and I remember all that, and it wasn't like I just started in high school and was immediately benching 225 or 300. I've had to work up from the bottom, and I've never made monster increases or started off in a big scenario where I'm like this huge huge high school kid benching like 300 pounds. That was never the case. I really had to kind of scrap for everything, and just it's a lot of time under the bar. Being almost 30 now, started very young. Uh, do you, Mind Freak? Do you happen to feel sharp pain in upper back when you tighten up for heavy lifting setup? No, I don't feel any sharp pains. That would probably be a cause for concern. I'd feel very uncomfortable, I guess would be the right word. I mean, it's very uncomfortable. It doesn't feel good. I'm squeezing hard as possible, but I wouldn't say there's a sharp pain. But who knows what's going on with that? I will get that checked out. Only sharp pain I get right now is that sciatic pain when I set up to bench. Just having my legs down in that position, my left, having my lower back. Haven't been doing much squats and deadlifts lately, so that's been helping. But being in that arch position, that lower back, when that gets crunched up, just this monster pain coming down my left leg, trying to get up off the bench or finishing up a really, really heavy set where I'm trying to drive into that position as much as possible. I mean, it's slow to get up off the bench, and it's just a shooting nasty pain right through my left leg. But it is what it is, you know. If you get the bench, it don't matter. Um, so yeah, nothing with the upper back like that. Mind Freak, do you deadlift? Yeah, I do full power. Last full power meet I did was last year. Had an 800 squat, had 785 bench, and I had a real shitty 545 deadlift. Only got my opener. It was a 2,120 pound total. Um, so that was my last raw meet. I was planning to do or I'm sorry, my last full power meet, and I was planning to do a full power meet in 3 weeks. Ended up getting canceled. I was going to transition over to doing it bench only, but ended up getting canceled. So it is what it is. Adil's training. I want my back to be so big no one ever has to watch it for me. Yeah, so keep plugging away. Big back is never a weakness. And the deal said, "Oh no, I meant when you were younger and did push-ups only and built up your chest." So when I started with push-ups, oh man, I mean it would have been hard to get like five. Um, Sean Clark, I'm super close to a 2 plate bench that I'm attempting next week. How should I build up and prepare for it? Last week I hit 215 for two. Um, so if you're working up to the 225, my friend, I would just have really aggressive singles on your plate for warm-ups. And I would get enough warm-ups in. I wouldn't just take, especially if you're going for 225, I wouldn't just take quarter jumps up. I would take probably the bar. Honestly, I would do like a 10-5. I would do a quarter five. I would do a plate. I would do a plate 10-5. That'll be 165. I'd do a plate quarter five, 195. Maybe do 210, somewhere in between. So you're getting 6, 7 or so warm ups in between before you even go for that 225. That's how I would play it. You need that warm up time. Treat it as if you were trying to work up to a 500-pound bench. There's going to be a significant amount of warm ups during that period of time. So take your time with the warm ups, and don't feel like you can't load up like a 10-5 for your second warm up, something like that. And always start with the empty bar. I always say you got to earn your way to add the weight to the bar, and it starts with an empty bar. You bring that intensity to an empty bar. Everyone starts at an empty bar, no matter how strong you are. John Sanders. Recovering from labrum tear, no surgery. I'm currently benching 375 in an Inzer SD Black HD Blast shirt. Do you think I could hit 405 in a double ply Inzer Rage X by my 50th birthday next November? I don't see why not, my friend. Um, I know, it sounds like you've been kicking ass, and um, I don't think you will have trouble doing that. I think you could definitely make that happen. Just got to put in the work required to make it happen. But I'm very confident that you will be hitting that 405. And reach out to me. We got a 400-pound club shirt. Actually, we've had some issues with I think the material that's printed on, so I have to double check on that. I don't think it's available right now in our store. The club shirts, each 100 pounds, so I have to check on that. But definitely check out bigbenches.com, guys, for your apparel needs. We got some cool shirts there, some jackets, hoodies for the fall winter. We got a lot of cool stuff there. We got backpacks, towels, sweat towels. Don't need as much now. I mean, maybe if you're in Florida, but not using the sweat towels much now. But cool backpacks, stuff like that. So check out bigbenches.com. Apparel, equipment, sleeves, wraps, all that. We got the best wraps, guys. We got the best wraps. Tony Carlino just went down. He attempted, I think he almost got his opener nine something. And I rush shipped his wraps out. He messaged me. He was like, "Hey, can you get wraps to me by tomorrow?" We did the priority shipping. It was a holiday the next day, but he was able to pick them up the day after, and he had his meet on the weekend. Tony loves our wraps. Does very well. I mean, he's a fantastic bencher. He's gonna be pushing 1,000 pounds in no time. So we have best wraps in the game, guys. Go check them out. Jill Power, thanks, Coach. Still holding on for future Big Benches New England area seminar. We've definitely been up there, my friend. So hopefully, come your way soon. I grew up in Western Mass, so that's my home area. Sean Clark, thanks, man. I'll get rid of my bar to one plate jump, and then I knew that might be a bit aggressive. Yeah, so especially if you're pushing for a 225 bench, don't take that type of a jump. Take your time with the warm ups. I think that's one of the biggest things. If you're not benching to 250 plus yet, a lot of lifters just get caught up in taking the quarter jumps or the plate jumps like that, and you're into your working set or your top attempt. Three sets in, and that's just too early. You need time to warm up into the setup and get that nervous system primed up, and that'll help you out a lot. Uh, Coach, thoughts on belt or no belt for raw bench? Thank you. So I'd say wear the belt. I think it's a great tool to focus on your brace. You can feel the belt there. You can compress against it. But I'd say if the belt in any way affects your ability to set up and create that arch, I would take it off right away because I don't think the benefits are there that outweigh the positioning. Positioning is number one. Having slightly better breathing bracing maybe would definitely be secondary. So a belt if it does not affect your position. Mind Freak. How to train a week before bench press competition? Do you prefer lightweight, high reps? How should I know my perfect opening weight? So openers usually with our team we'll determine openers about at least 4 weeks out, 4 or 5 weeks out. So we're gonna know probably what we're gonna open with at that time. We're gonna have time to practice that about maybe 3 weeks. We're gonna be hitting openers, and whether it's in the progression of the warm ups or it's just that session we're trying to hit openers. Um, so we'll have time to practice openers, plenty of time. So that's usually determined a bit earlier than the week out. Now, for the week out of the meet, what I'll do with our athletes is very simple. If you're an equipped lifter, you're just doing your raw warm ups before you throw the shirt on. So it's really not going to be anything significant whatsoever. Um, just taking a lot of slow progressions, raw warm ups. So, like, I'd go up to 315. I'd just work slow progressions up. That's what I would do. And then we just pump up the lats and the triceps. So the lat pull downs 2x20, tricep push down 2x20, and that's pretty standard of what we'll do the week of the meet. It's really not much work at all. All the work has been done about 3 weeks out, and then it's just kind of fine tuning things going into the meet. Allow that rest and recovery. All right, guys. Drop some cues if you got them. Sip of coffee to the working man. All right, we're live on YouTube every Tuesday, 12 p.m. Eastern time, guys. Tune in to our YouTube channel, Big Benches. We've been growing pretty good on YouTube. Happy about that. We've been seeing some promising stuff on YouTube continue to grow, and the pace we're growing constantly is growing. So it's good to see the channel growing. We put a lot of time and effort into what we put up there. If you guys ever want to see anything in specific, our membership plan, we just started doing training recaps, and I post a weekly workout. And you get access to all kinds of cool stuff, like all our program templates and things. So I've been super pumped about building up our membership plan right now. It's hosted on a different site, so that's all there, accessible for you. And yeah, that's been great building that up. But it's great seeing the YouTube continue to grow and constantly trying to think of what I can throw in there. I think I'm going to start posting our topic episodes of the Benchcast. Putting up some B-roll film just of us doing training, and just overlay the podcast just so you guys have an outlet too, that other than just the podcast, if you guys want to sit down and watch the podcast, maybe do a split screen type of thing, whatever. Something idea I'm playing around with. But you guys have any ideas of things you'd like to see on YouTube? Maybe a critique video, get a bunch of videos and do critiques or whatever. I'm open to suggestions. Mike Freak, you're the best, Coach. I appreciate it, bud. Deals training, no question. I love you. Love you too, buddy. I appreciate that support. Means a lot. Matt does yelling lightweight, baby, like Ronnie Coleman, really make the weight lighter. I think it is. I think it makes it lowers the load by about 15%. it depends on how deep you can get your voice when you say lightweight, baby. So I definitely think that helps. Adil's training, he likes that. Does that make the weight heavier? That could make the weight heavier if you're trying to talk instead of breathe and brace. Sip of coffee to the working man. See my Starbucks cup. Holiday cups are out now. It's just, I think they're trying to stay pretty neutral, not upset anyone. It's pretty much a red cup with some green swirls through it. We used to at least get snowflakes, but I guess that might have upset someone. Probably the same people that are upset that the Washington Redskins had to change to the Washington football team. Now that's a little ridiculous if you ask me. I think the I think the Redskin term is it was supposed to be to honor that tribe. So I never understood that, but I think they made the Washington football team just kind of stick it to them. Mod Haas, great question, my friend. How do you get over the fear of heavyweight close to one rep max? I would tell you, just if you're not confident, fake that confidence. Just zone in on the task at hand. Try not to think too much. I think lifters get caught up a lot. I know they do on what they're doing when they're going for heavyweight like that. You just gotta empty your mind and fake confidence. Because eventually it's gonna turn into real confidence. Like when I get under the bar, something I always try to tell myself is we're gonna let this rip, send it. Um, whatever happens, happens essentially. Um, I don't know what's gonna happen, but we're gonna take this for a ride. It's gonna be fun. Safety bars are up, so I'm not nervous about it. Let's see what happens. And even if you're nervous wreck, channel that into good energy. Um, Fake confidence. Pretend that you're confident. Pretend that you're gonna crush it, and then eventually it'll just start happening. It's been a big hurdle for me. I lost like 30 pounds earlier in the year. Bench was impacted significantly. Obviously, was kind of hitting around the low 700s, and then there was a period of time after my last meet where I was like, "Wow, I'm hitting these weights pretty good, feeling pretty good." I just never pushed myself because I was used to just being in that bubble of the low 700s, and then it isn't until recently, and like I was just gonna work up to maybe a little over 800 something last session. I threw 900 pounds on the bar, and a lot of it is that mental, just I can handle this weight. I haven't ever really handled 900 straight weight ever. You say throw it on. I can handle this weight. Fake the confidence if you don't have it. And I was really confident going into that lift. The 850 was smoked, so it's really just having the confidence in yourself, not getting tripped up on numbers. And if you're not confident, fake the confidence. Any questions coming in YouTube before we close the show down? We've been trying to take some clips of the podcast lately on the Bench Talk Live. Been posting it up on our Instagram, trying to make some posts out of it, and share some stuff on our story as well. Adil's training dips. So I covered dips a little bit earlier. My thought on that, it's not something I typically perform on like a power station. I'll do bench dips time to time. I just think it's kind of a high risk versus reward type movement. I do think there's a lot of value in it, but it's just something I usually stay clear of. Last question, coach, going for one rep max once a week or once a month. So depends what variation. I wouldn't go for one rep max, just straight weight, comp grip, comp setup, all the time like that. Once a month, yeah, that's kind of what we've been doing with our athletes on like a conjugate style system here. Is we'll test like at the end of the month and see what's helping our bench get up, but um, for the most part, it's all working up heavy in variations. Whether we're doing more reps, we're changing our grips, or adding in boards, or doing dead press, or doing something different instead of just benching all the time. So we're trying to key in on movements that are going to help our weak points, long pause benching, stuff like that. But it's not going to be work up to a max every week type scenario in terms of a one rep max, straight weight comp setup and all that. We can work up to like a 3 rep max on something. Can work up to a 1 rep max close grip bench. We'll do that kind of stuff. All right, guys, bringing in some more questions. We'll take a few more before we close down the show. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Remember, you just tell a friend. Tuesdays, 12 p.m. Eastern Time, Bench Talk Live. Also, check out the Benchcast on Spotify if you haven't. Give us a subscribe. Check out some of the episodes. We got a great one coming out this Thursday. Just recorded it just before this. And I think it's going to be a great episode. I'm super excited for it. It's a simple tip titled Simple Tip that is going to help you bench bigger weight. It's a simple thing, guarding the takeout, I talked about. And, if it's a common mistake I see with many lifters, but if you're able to handle this and overcome this facet of training, then boy, is your lift's going to climb up. So definitely check out that Thursday topic episode that we got coming up, the Benchcast on Spotify. All right, guys, so we don't have any more questions coming in. I'll leave you with a sip of coffee for the working man out there, working man and women. All right, this has been Bench Talk Live. I really appreciate everyone that tuned in. And look forward to seeing everyone next week, 12 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday, live on YouTube. You can drop your questions as well Monday on our IG stories. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Thanks for joining us. This has been the Benchcast.